I would like now to introduce you to David Jennings. So a second David.
Um, we just learned, yeah, quite a lot from another David. I heard Chris mention we've got two Davids back to back. I wasn't given the warning that the David before me was an award-winning David. I'm not an award-winning speaker, David. I'm one of you guys. I'm an SE. But I'm going to do my best to try and avoid the direct comparisons as well. But I'm determined not to give you a butt-clenchingly poor presentation, as I heard it referred to. So yeah, personally learned a lot, and it's difficult to prepare for a speaker presentation when you're spending so much time writing notes on the guide before you. Really insightful stuff, and I'm actually going to try and remember to reference some of what I heard as I go through this because I learned a lot on that previous session. So first of all, I'm really excited to be part of the PreSales Collective Summit. This is my first time speaking to anybody out here. And this session is really going to be around active listening, creative questioning, really how to ask intelligent questions, as I think too often we find ourselves wanting to pitch and sell rather than understand the customer needs. So there will be some themes definitely weaving through from the previous session. I think SEs are they're great. We're great at problem solving, right? But I think we often need to work on maybe our listening skills a little bit better. We maybe wait to speak too often or want to show the next thing. We're excited to demo, to showcase. And maybe we don't react to what's been said as well. So to David's point, I think he made earlier, maybe this can help bridge that gap of being or seeing someone not living up to their potential, right? I think so many people have that potential. I think this is one of those skills that can help bridge that gap. So I'm looking forward to diving into this deeper with you all. Before I do, maybe a quick introduction to myself, as many of you will be seeing me for the first time. As Chris mentioned, I am from across the pond, technically, originally. I'm from London, England, but I live in Toronto, Canada. I saw a bunch of people from the comments logging in from Toronto, Canada. So hey to you guys. And I also lived in the US down in South Florida for about 3 years between then. So I've moved around a bit. I'll talk a little bit about that kind of journey as I move through. In David's terms, I think David Duffett's terms, I think I'm a triangle. I think that's probably who I define myself as, and I think I'm at times close to being a little bit wiggly as well. So my unhealthy obsession would probably be Liverpool Football Club for my sins. Professionally, so I mentioned WebEx and some of the issues I had there getting in with Zoom, but my role is leading a sales. We actually call ourselves solutions engineering now, and that term is so fluid that we're redefining it all the time. And I lead a team within a specific product set at Cisco. It's something called CPaaS, Communication Platform as a Service. Essentially, what is that? It helps businesses communicate with their customers over digital channels that they love. SMS, email, app push, voice, the traditional channels, to WhatsApp and the new over-the-top social channels Apple and Google and Meta are bringing to the market. In short, if you've ever received a pharmacy prescription reminder from your pharmacy, from the likes of Walgreens or somebody in the US, that would be from us. A buy online, pick up in store reminder from large retailers like Next and IKEA or Best Buy in the US, that would be from us. Balance alerts from your banks like Barclays or Royal Bank of Canada. Appointment reminders from your healthcare provider, NHS, etc. Hopefully you get the picture. So that's the field of tech I work in. And most of you probably didn't know that Cisco even did that, right? It's not probably the most synonymous technology with Cisco. Those of you that are familiar with Cisco as a company and WebEx. But that's because I joined through an acquisition 3 years ago. The company I worked for, a UK-based company, and we were acquired by Cisco about just over 3 years ago now. And I'd been with that company for 10 years prior to that, so I've been in the same kind of field, same technology space for a while. I started my career, and we've heard a bit about sales, and we'll hear more today about the AE and SE relationship. I started my career on the sales side, actually. So I was on the dark side, and I worked with some fantastic pre-sales folks early on in my career, and they were the reasons why I think I won any of the deals that I did. So it was an easy transition for me to be convinced to move towards the pre-sales side. And the catalyst for that was when the company I worked for, we acquired a company in America, in South Florida, near Miami. And my CEO at the time offered me the opportunity to go out there and help as kind of a sales coach, integration, trying to help them understand our technology better to sell it into the American market. Huge privilege for me. One of the things I noticed when I arrived was that a pre-sales function didn't exist. So initially, I took the challenge of building that from the ground up. It was a great learning curve, kind of experiencing like startup culture to where I am now, which is big tech at Cisco. It's kind of helped me see both sides of the coin. But one thing I wanted to call out was, as a new leader in a new market, the pre-sales collective was a resource that really helped me get advice, canvas opinion from peers. There are so many sales books and sales resources for sales leaders out there. There's just so few for pre-sales. So I'm very grateful for this community. It really helped me get to where I am now, and that's why I wanted to be an ambassador, and I wanted to be, given the opportunity to share my learnings back with the community and hopefully add some value. One of the major things I did when I arrived in the US, one of the first initiatives I ran with the help of a fantastic sales coach by the name of actually a guy called Paul Bramson. Anyone happens to have worked with him, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. We tailored a 3-day kind of sales skills camp for all of our North American sellers, tailored to our technology, but focused on solution selling. And really, we still use it to this day. And the key principles that we were trying to, embed in our sellers were around discovery and the initial conversation. And they focused predominantly on active listening, creative questioning, and rapport building. So that's really where I've come from, but also therefore, I guess, why I'm so passionate about this subject. I was following, the chat and the comments during David's previous session, and I can see there's some real thought leaders out there. This is my perspective. I'm looking forward to you guys chipping in. I will ask some questions to the audience throughout, and I'd love to hear kind of what you guys think about the way that I guess this exists, and the way this is kind of managed and governed within your own companies today. So with that said, I'm going to have Chris chipping in at times, and I'm going to try and work with him on some of the questions and kind of seed some stuff in here. But I'm going to focus on the art of active listening. So go beyond hearing, truly understand clients' needs and motivations. I'm going to talk about crafting powerful questions. So how do we spark meaningful dialogue, uncover hidden gems of information? And again, David Duffett actually referred to this, but building genuine rapport as well. How do we use all of that to foster trust and build real connections for lasting relationships? So maybe I should have called these my 3 golden nuggets, but I'm learning for next time. So I'll run through a few slides. I said I'll give my perspective. I'm conscious there's going to be many, and so I think it's also worth mentioning at this juncture. I actually am not probably someone that my friends and family would say is a natural listener or a fantastic listener, right? I see this as a craft, as a skill. This isn't something that just comes naturally to me that I think I'm uniquely positioned to educate on. So I really would like to also ask you guys kind of what are the other kind of key areas of this, of the key areas as we move through that you think really resonate, and maybe we could dive into a little bit deeper in maybe future sessions as well. I'm going to start with why. Why does this matter before I get into those 3 nuggets I'm going to call them now? So I'll paint the picture that I think was really a very common scenario in my early career, but something I still see pretty prevalently today. You show up to a meeting, you plug in your laptop, you open up PowerPoint, the clients, the guests, they enter the room, and you put some slides up on the screen. You do a couple of introductions early on, and then you just launch. You thrust into your pitch, and you start just talking at the customer. You stood up at the front. Token pauses every now and again to maybe say, did this resonate? Maybe they're met with some kind of non-committal head nods or mhm, or maybe just silence at times, and you just plow through. And at the end, you kind of ask what they think. They tell you, we'll regroup and we'll let you know. They thank you for your time. You leave the meeting, adrenaline coursing through your veins because you just stood up and you've just done a pitch, which is no easy feat. And you think it went really well. You send a follow-up email trying to schedule a demo, perhaps for a problem that you don't know whether they even have or not because you spent all your time talking at them, and you wonder why it doesn't go anywhere. And I think when I saw this statistic here, 30% of demos unqualified, I really, I really started to ask myself, how do we as leaders move the needle on this? What can we do to change it? Because if the demo's unqualified, the pipeline's weaker, the chances of conversion are lower, we close fewer deals, and ultimately we generate less revenue. So it's a huge, huge problem for the business. But why is it happening so frequently across so many organizations? And what skills can we better equip our teams with to overcome this? Because typically to say, let's just qualify better, let's just do a better job in qualification, maybe fails to ask the important question, which is how do we do that? And it's my belief, and that's why I'm talking to you about these kind of themes today, that the main subpar skill, so to speak, is the inability to listen and ask questions effectively. But as I move through, and maybe we can address some of this at the end, if you guys had a magic wand, and in the spirit of doing a presentation about listening and just talking at you, I see the irony here. I want to hear back from you. What skills do you see lacking in your team that would help move the needle here outside of, you maybe will agree with me that it's active listening, but outside of that as well, what would you want your teams or as individual contributors to be better at to help move the needle? And maybe it's some of the things you heard from David on the previous talk as well. I certainly think some of those things would be really useful for me and my team. Okay, I'm going to launch in then to the first theme, and I'm going to invite Chris to come off mute in a second as well, because before I run through this and explain why Leo is up here, and I'll level set on active listening, but I'm not going to spoil. Before I ask Chris a question, I'm not going to give him all of the answers. So to level set on active listening, I'll say for me that's when we truly listen, we're not just waiting to get out what we want to say or respond with. When we're really listening, I think our role is to better comprehend, empathize, and often engage really with the perspectives being shared from the other side of the table. And this level of engagement should foster respect, validation, and I think that forms the bedrock for building trust and rapport. So with that said, Chris, if I were to ask you this question, if I were to say, hey, Chris, sell me this pen, what would the first thing you do be?
Yeah, I mean, I would first not tell you anything about the pen, and I would say, David, when's the last time you bought a pen?
Oof, Chris, I haven't bought a pen for 2-3 years.
Yeah, so I'm not selling you a pen. I would ask you where did the last pen you used come from, right? Like, did you get it at a hotel you were staying at? Did you get it from your office? And is there an office manager or a facility coordinator I can speak to?
Yeah, and I think what Chris is getting at there, and thanks, Chris, for that. That's me throwing you under a bus a little bit, and that was obviously not a rehearsed discussion. But what Chris has helped with there is understand, I think, the first key point that I wanted to bring to the group is don't pitch, right? In an era where everyone likes to talk, and obviously I'm guilty of it right now, I think traditional sales has always been about the pitch, about the demo, the bravado with it. And I think maybe counterintuitively, as Chris just executed there, the real answer is don't sell the pen. And David referred to it as a great term. Prescription without diagnosis is malpractice, and I love that. Many sales folks will approach this challenge by saying, this is a great pen, the pen writes upside down, it's the cheapest pen on earth, we've got the best pen, it will never run out. And they aren't all the reasons that the pen is good. And they'll tell you that. They'll tell you about the features, and the better ones might even talk about some of the benefits, but that's not what the answer is, right? And point two is, don't wait to get out what we want to say. Don't have questions lined up, resist the urge to start solutioning on the fly, and try and react to what's being said by our customer. I think seeking to understand the person is really important, right? The real answer is, before I'm going to sell anybody a pen, I need to know about the person. Chris needs to know, do I even use a pen? I want to know what their needs are, maybe what kind of pens they use, how often they use a pen, as Chris asked. How long have you been in the market for a pen? Why are you looking for a pen? Are you even looking for a pen? I think we can immediately translate the word pen into any of the products that we use today, and you get the point. And this will help us control the conversation, because standing up in front of a room sometimes might make us feel like we're in control. But during discovery, I think that makes you the puppet, not the master. Get the customer talking, get them answering my questions. And only then am I really controlling the conversation and taking it in the direction that I need it to. Find out exactly the information that I need for the final point, fitting their need. Because once I have it, I can say, Chris, based on what you've just said to me, the pen I have right here is the perfect fit, and let me tell you why. And so, really, in summary here, I think most salespeople think that they're supposed to sell you the pen, when a seasoned SE like Chris will turn it into a qualifying session and find out what you need. Chris, just a little check-in with you before I move on. I'm happy to move on, but if there's any questions or anything at this juncture, I can always take anything and take a pause.
Yeah, no, I love it so far. And if anybody has any Q&As, drop them in the Q&A. I have a question for you though, because it depends on the sales cycle. Like, I've seen a lot of comments on discovery demos and non-discovery demos, and every company that I worked for had a different process. And sometimes you just kind of have to pitch, right? Sometimes there is no request to do discovery, or we don't always get the opportunity for discovery. So if you don't get the opportunity to do any of that, and you're brought in, we said 30% are unqualified, depends on where you work. Sometimes it's 70%, right?
Right.
When you don't get that opportunity for discovery, what do you suggest then?
Yeah, that's a great call out. And there's as you said, there's different sides of the spectrum. There's, I think, what David was saying, the one I love, which is, can you get on a call with a customer before the call itself to try and do some, a friendly discovery? Can you just get, if you tell them, hey, this is going to be a much better use of all of our time and your senior stakeholders' time if we just spend 15 minutes, you and I, just talking about some of your key pain points, so we can maybe tailor this discussion better. I would use that. But as you say, Chris, that's not always possible. And so there were some great tips on presenting on the previous talk. And I would say, if you're going to present, if you're going to have to pull slides up, which we all have had to do, I think I call it kind of give a little to get a little, right? You should keep it short, but there's no reason why we can't load our presentations with open-ended questions and kind of pause at places and say, okay, tell me about, how are you solving for this today? Do you have a solution in place already? Tell me about it. How do you see this fitting into your technology stack? Or is this a problem for you today? I think we can be direct and open and ask kind of thought-provoking questions as we present to customers, even if we do have to pull some slides up and talk to it.
Well said.
All right.
I think
I saw a hand up, Chris, but we can. I'll lean on you for whether we take questions now.
We've got some good questions coming in and a lot of comments as well on this. So I think the second thing to think about, and what I kind of go to, is around people. Like, if we're in this scenario, we're doing demos, we're doing pitches, we're looking for that opportunity to even get involved in the opportunity at an earlier time. Where do you see people fail? You have a lot of experience. You lead a huge team. Why do you think people fail in this? And what do you think gets in the way?
Yeah, okay. It's a really good question as well. I think David Duffett answered this to some extent as well when he talked about confidence. I think it's sometimes scary to sit in front of a prospect or somebody without any slides. I think we can feel a bit exposed. We worry about awkward moments. We worry about failure. Whereas I think if we're talking and we're presenting out, we can walk out of there thinking that, you know, we did a good job, we used our time, we sold well, and if they want to buy it, they want to buy it, and if they don't, they don't. Whereas it's much harder to sit there without that security blanket and just talk to a customer. I had an example recently when I was at a conference, and they do meetings at these conferences in rooms where customers can schedule some time to speak to you, and there's no monitoring there. So I have 5 people from the customer sat opposite me on a table and me on one side. And all I'm able to do is just talk to them and ask them questions. I'm forced to do the discovery. And it is terrifying. And the first 5 minutes, you're like, right, I need to be prepared. You know, as David Duffy said, be prepared. You have to have a narrative. You need to have a goal, an outcome. Where are you trying to go with the conversation? And so I think people fail because of that. And I think it's creating a habit and being confident enough in your discovery abilities to rely on them, right? And have that conversation with the customer. Trust yourself, trust that you're a good conversationalist, that you're an expert in your field, and that you're going to be able to you can be successful doing this. I think that's important.
Yeah, really well said. I mean, when we're on the art of active listening, before we shift over to questioning, one thought comes to mind, which is it's something I heard many years ago, which is the most present person in the room wins. Now, we've all been taught that the person with the data wins, but the most present person in the room, in my mind, if you're in a meeting, wins. You can allow your curiosity to lead you instead of having that curse of knowledge and assumptions.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really good point. And curiosity should be something, you know, when I said maybe active listening doesn't come naturally to SEs, and this segues nicely into the next slide, actually. I think curiosity is something that is definitely built into the DNA of SEs, right? We're curious, we want to learn more about technology, just apply that to your customer as well. And so if I do segue in then to the next, you know, piece, and this is where I think, you know, SEs can really kind of turn this into a superpower, really, is think of questions as creative acts of intelligence. Like, I love this quote. And I'm going to talk around some kind of basic tactics that I think helped me and helped my team cover the fundamentals of the training I referred to earlier, kind of hone these skills. And it's a muscle that we constantly train, right? This isn't a point in time exercise. You've got to keep doing this. And so, you know, thoughtful, intelligent, skillful questions that form the basis of excellent discovery are really, really important here. And my 2 top tips, which I think David Duffy referred to this, you know, none of this is necessarily groundbreaking. It is just practice, and it's just continuing to do it. But open-ended questions and ensuring that you clarify. So open-ended sounds obvious, but so often do you hear the question, you know, are you doing this today? Do you do this? And I think we can move into the world of, you know, tell me about, and how are you, and what do you want it to, and how does it look like, and what keeps you from doing this? So here are some of the examples of the open-ended questions that, of course, you can tailor and apply to your own vertical. But the top, or software, I should say, but the top question is the one that I think is the most important, and it's the, you know, the clarify. You know, what does the company mean when you use the term? I think people think they seem more intelligent when they pretend to understand, right? And they think they may seem stupid if they ask a question. And so being able, you know, to ask a follow-up question, for me, shows a much higher level of understanding and appreciation of what's been said. I think the other thing around clarification is, don't have your next question on hand. Always respond to what the customer is saying. You know, or even worse, as SEs, we want to jump into the solution before we really know what the problem is. They might be going down a really great path, or we might be talking about 2 entirely different things. You know, I think if we go to any software website, we might see that, you know, 10 of the same words come up frequently around cloud and integrations and data silos and omni-channel and all these kind of buzzwords. Understand what that means, your customer experience. What does that mean to your customer? What does that really mean? And the example I give within my team is, we're often asked, you know, do you integrate with XYZ? And the answer that often comes back is, yes, we do. And that's the wrong answer, right? We should be asking, what do you mean by integrate? What are you trying to do with that? Now, rather than saying, yeah, we've got an integration to Salesforce, it's really easy to slip up and kind of bite on what we think is our cue to sell. Chris, I'm going to jump into the final bucket around, or nugget, I should say, around rapport. Before I do, is there anything we want to tease out? Anything that's been coming up, or you can let me know to proceed. I'm easy either way.
Yeah, great question from Andrew came in on he has historically worked with older AEs that love to sell and love to take control of that meeting. I think we've all been there. We have a seasoned AE on the call. They love to run the whole thing. So how does an SE demonstrate value when there's no ability to be the most present person, or there's no ability to be um, to get on stage with them? And to clarify my point on being the most present person in the room, what I meant by is being present in the moment, not necessarily having the stage. Non-distracted is what I was referring to. But it's a great question from Andrew. Your AE is taking control of the meeting.
Yeah.
How do you get there and show your value?
No, it is a great question. No, probably one answer to that. Well, first thing I'd say is it's a culture shift in your organization, right? You have to shift the culture of how the AE and SE relationships work and the role of the SE. So this isn't something that you can solve for when you're on the call or in the room with the customer. This is something that has to be agreed upon up front. It has to be something that your leadership and the sales leadership are agreeing that, hey, this is the value that the SE brings. These are the types of questions that they need to be asking, and they need to be part of this conversation. Otherwise, yeah, you're at the mercy of a sales guy trying to sell things that you're not even convinced you can deliver, right? They shouldn't be answering questions on the solutions and technology. Otherwise, there'll be a gap in terms of what you're promising customers and what you're truly being able to deliver. So yeah, it's a tough one, and it's part of the reason why we started doing this training, frankly, as well with our team in North America, is we were trying to do a mind shift. They were used to maybe that way of selling, and I said they didn't have a pre-sales organization. It was sellers going out and pushing. They were the guys who were standing up and doing most of the selling. So we also had to teach them, the importance of maybe a different way of selling. So we had the sales guys and the SEs in a room together, learning the same kind of methodologies and approaches towards what we thought were active listening and the art of discovery. So if you can influence, internal alignment, I would start there. That'd be my answer. Chris, what do you think? Anything you want to add to that?
Love that. I mean, David, you're the global head of sales engineering at a company that I think a lot of us would love to work for and love to work with. And one thing I always think about is, what does good look like where you work? And I try to tease that out of all kinds of interactions I have and in people that work in organizations that I find inspiring. So when it comes
Yep.
to the strategy, like these open-ended questions, and I think it's nice to hear it, but it's tough when you have 6 demos a day to continuously do it. So do you have a process in which you ensure this can happen on a regular basis? Is it in training? Is it in templating? Is it in a Salesforce
Yeah.
template? What does it look like where you work?
Yeah, great question. So I can answer that very simply. And we actually across the organization. So some of the stuff that I've been talking about are things that I did maybe within our kind of communication sales division, but at Cisco in general, we use MEDPIC. MEDPIC is a sales methodology that we try and approach. The problem with the sales methodologies is they don't teach the listening and the creative questioning that drives, the measure, the metrics, sorry, the economics, the buyer. And what we try and what we try and do with our sales team is ensure that the SE is more responsible for example, identifying pain, right? That should be where the SE is responsible for that, the I in the med pick and things like that. So we have a kind of an owner, like a RASI around roles and responsibilities for who should be driving the different elements of that kind of I guess sales methodology or sales process that we run across the team. That also helps when you're trying to scale this and you have experienced AEs who really like to talk and more junior ones who are more collaborative. It keeps alignment, right? So it doesn't matter who's working with who. Everybody knows kind of where their role is and what they're supposed to be bringing to the table.
Wow, that's inspiring because I've often worked in organizations that didn't have that structure. Now, Courtney put a great comment in here on preparation, like identifying who is owning what role, purpose defined for the meeting. So thank you, Courtney. It kind of sounds like that's what you've done with this MedPick process. I'll be honest, it's the first time I've heard of it.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. It used to be medic, and they keep adding letters to it for those of people who are familiar with it. So I wouldn't say it's perfect. But look, if you're trying to align everybody under a single kind of end-to-end selling motion, and you're having problems, you need some kind of definition. So I really like the way it's been implemented personally, and I think it's about the way you implement it rather than the methodology itself. That's the other thing. And I completely agree with Courtney's comment. I've got a slide at the end, which as well is something that we give to our sellers and our pre-sales team. It's kind of a cheat sheet about what does a good first meeting look like, and that is on there. Aligning your AE and SE and preparation ahead of it. That is definitely one of our ticks. So we'll get onto that at the end.
I love the cheat sheet idea. I hope you can share it. So, a quick time check. We have 10 minutes until we get into
Yes.
breakouts. This is an awesome conversation to bring into the breakouts as well. So, thank you so much. I'll let you continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think you'll see those of you might be familiar with the show Hot Ones and Sean Evans. For those of you, um, hopefully for those of you that have seen it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I reference him. It might seem like an offbeat reference for building rapport and trust for SEs, but bear with me. And for those of you that haven't, it's some probably quite fun homework. Get on YouTube and watch him interview some celebrities while eating hot wings. Um, but kind of jokes aside, the reason why Sean Evans and his team build such incredible trust and respect is due to the research. It's due to the preparation before they get that guest in the room, and they went to the effort to understand them better than any other interviewer on the circuit. These guys are all doing boring press circuits. They're speaking to probably 10 different people a day, but he manages to ask them about things that they want to talk about, and he gains their trust, respect, and he builds an incredible rapport every single time without fail. And most importantly, he gets them to open up, right? He gets what he wants from them, which is a fantastic interview. Um, and I think David made the point of I think it was the Roosevelt kind of quotes around, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, I believe is what it was. And I think this absolutely plays into this point here. And this translates obviously into software and our customers, right? Your customers, they speak to a lot of vendors. You're not the only conversation they're having that week. They might be bored. It might be early on a Monday morning. It might be late on a Friday afternoon. They might not be looking forward to the meeting. How do you stand out? How do you be memorable? How do you build a connection? And I think the next point I want to make, you see here, and if you see any of his interviews here, the amount of times a guest will say, that is an amazing question. That's a really good question. Um, I think there's nothing more satisfying than being in a room with a customer and having that as a response. I think it's something that we can also measure ourselves on a little bit. I kind of pride myself on getting that out of a meeting. When they say, wow, you've really taken the time to understand my business. And if I could give you a kind of a summary on, how do you go about doing this? I would say just, simply you can start to, as David said, you can find a friendly, you can have a chat with them ahead of the meeting and try and get some intel. That's not always possible, but you can always Google search them. You can look them up. You can find an exec or somebody, even maybe the person you're meeting with. Have they been referenced in a recent article? Has the company been referenced? Is there something that you can take from that? Or even via LinkedIn, or just even read the annual report? And you should be able to have some kind of positioning around, I recently read that or was told that your company was doing X, and you, the CIO or the CEO, said that the company were investing in Y. I don't want to assume anything, so please can you elaborate on how that will impact the business or our conversations or customer experience or whatever it is that your line of questioning is going down. I think that allows you to connect on a more personal level. It shows you made the effort. You didn't just show up to sell at them, and it engages them early on. And you need to engage them early on because the rest of the conversation won't go the way you want it to unless you get that bit right from the start and you do your due diligence. Non-verbals. I think I had a question on this on the previous one as well. I think Andrew asked a question kind of around this. So I will position a question back out to the audience because I really find this debate interesting. But a lot of this, we started training and building these training sessions 5 years ago. So this is pre-pandemic, and so kind of then we were in a room with a customer, and so it was much easier to talk about the way that effective communication is about how we deliver our message, what we say, but also what we do, and not just hearing what the prospect is saying, but also listening for what they might not be saying. Body language, tone of voice, eye contact, or lack of eye contact. These could all be cues that something's resonating, or maybe needs further clarification, or it's not resonating. And the question I maybe would ask back is, something we struggle with. We also, all of my team, and no one I think has the answer or has cracked it, is in this digital world of digital presentations, how do we overcome kind of camera off discovery work and presentations and continue to build a rapport with a customer in a way that was so difficult before? You might have the corridor conversations if you're in person, or you might go and grab lunch or a drink afterwards, and not being able to do that. I would be interested in any kind of techniques and tactics that others use and find successful. So please drop them into the comments. And getting towards the end of this leads to the importance of validation, right? So make sure you acknowledge them. I can appreciate where you're coming from. That was a really strong observation. But also don't just be a sycophant, right? Don't be afraid to say, I'm not sure I see it that way. Remember, you're having a conversation. You want to appear credible. You're an expert in your field. And you also want the conversation to maybe go in a certain direction, right? You're trying to lead them down a certain path. So you can always challenge them and say, actually, I'm not sure I agree with that. We see others doing this today. Some of our clients approached it differently and had real success. Here's why. What do you think of that? So here are some of the kind of ways and tips that I see successful on that front. And finally, run it back, right? Commit to a position at the end of the meeting, get meaningful feedback and be open to being told that you're maybe wrong or you've missed the point. So, you mentioned that one of your goals was X. Our solution will help you do this by achieving Y. Do you see how this will help you achieve your goal and benefit you're getting? And I think if you do that, you'll really reduce that kind of 30% number we talked about earlier on. But also the elephant in the room, it will also help you qualify out. And maybe that's a dirty word sometimes amongst sales folks. Everyone wants to keep the pipeline healthy. But maybe there's not a fit, and we don't want to waste our time and resource forcing next steps and bidding for something that we're not the right fit for. So it's not just about finding the next big win. It's about knowing where to spend our time and improving pipeline quality as well. With that, Chris, I've just got a takeaway slide at the end that I can leave behind for people, and I'll leave up. But any questions or kind of final comments as well?
To address one of the questions that came in, which I think is a really strong question. It's, sometimes we're brought in only on occasion when an existing customer has some tech questions. You got to love that, right? My customer has technical questions. Let me get the SE on. How do we advise the SEs on having a stronger presence? And if you go to your previous slide, I think there's just some great stuff on the bottom on the run it back. Because the second part of this question is around getting in too late. You mentioned, hey, we want to get in early to understand, right? But we feel awkward asking questions if we've been brought in too late because we technically should know the answer already. So how does an SE take that moment and circle it back and get the information they need while also giving themselves a sense of strong presence in the room?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the balance of this in every organization, depending on the product and how technical it is or how out of the box it is, will vary as well. It's that almost balance between sales discovery and technical discovery, right? How do you do both? But you can qualify it from a sales perspective to even bring the SE on the call in the first place and not be wasting their time and having sales do their role, but not take it so far down the road that when the SE comes in, they're requalified and they're actually contradicting. And so maybe I'm not giving the answer, but it really is about how you show up with your AE and your S and how you build that relationship and roles and responsibilities, right? What is a 15-20 minute sales discovery call? What kind of questions do we just need to get that next call where we're making sure that the SE is present and is a key kind of stakeholder? Because otherwise we will be requalifying. As SEs, we're going to have to requalify technically. So the AE doesn't want to be doing that. They don't be wasting the customer's time and asking questions again. So I really think that's kind of about that AE SE rapport for sure as well, and knowing roles and responsibilities across the two, and that delineation between sales discovery and technical discovery. We personally, I say as well, Chris, we encourage, some won't agree with this and they'll have the right reasons for it. We encourage our SEs to be brought in as early in the process as possible for that reason. We want them involved as soon as we're getting into any kind of real discovery.
Yeah, love that. All right, well, we're almost ready to go into breakout rooms. This has been super helpful, David. You can go ahead and go to your next slide, wrap us up.
Yes. Yeah, sure. I can leave this. I can drop this into the Slack group. I can put up on my LinkedIn or something so you guys can take it. But this is really one of the output slides that we just leave with the team. Just summarizing really what we discussed. Make sure you do your homework and you be the customer, live their customer experience if you can. There's nothing more powerful than actually being able to say, hey, as a customer, here are things I like or don't like about the way your solution works. As opposed to failing to prepare, preparing to fail, just show up and throw up, talking about yourself. I think what Courtney mentioned, right? You've got to know your role as a team. Don't meet for the first time on the call. That's killer. And have agreed intended outcomes, as opposed to no clear meeting goals. You're just having a conversation. Build that rapport, find the common ground, be memorable, have a conversation, talk their language if possible as well. If you're talking to a hospital, talk about DNAs, do not attend rates and things like that. You're talking to a retailer, talk about Wismo, where's my order, and things that make you sound credible. Listen more. 70-30 rule if you're unsure what kind of the ratio should be if possible, and try not to interrogate the customer, lead the witness, solution on the fly, force demos, death by PowerPoint. And that last point there was goal solution check. Always wrap it up, understand what do you think the goal was, what do you think the solution is, and check if you're on the same page. With that, Chris.
Love it. Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate it.